I went to nutrition school, then I went to med school. I took 0 business classes, 0.
I want to have a business that's potentially not that expensive. I want a business that's not that complex. I want a business that doesn't have that many employees. And I want a business that has some component of perhaps not needing me there to run it all the time. Before I even ever would have pondered buying my own business. And the only reason that I eventually did is because I hated my job. How can we have really strong bodies so we can enjoy all the fruits of our labor? And then finally, how can we have a really big bank account so that we can be the architect of our own life?
Welcome to another episode of the Save Yourself podcast. I have an amazing guest today, and I'm going to read a little bit about her bio, but I wanted to welcome Codie Sanchez to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So Codie is the founder and CEO of Curating, a digital education company with 7 million followers. Main Street Hold Company, a small business holding company that is focused on bringing Main Street businesses back to the limelight, and Contrarian Thinking Capital, a firm that invests money back into companies that support small business growth. Codie has amassed over 7 million followers across her social media platforms, building a huge community around the idea of building wealth through ownership. So I'm going to start with a controversial one that I heard you talking about one day, and you don't have to answer it the same, but I just want to know, what is the biggest mistake that people are making when it comes to money?
I think the biggest mistake most people make these days is that you don't track it. You know, one of my favorite mentors said that money is a cruel mistress, and if you don't pay attention to her, she'll leave you. And
I love that.
And I think that that's true. And so increasingly right now, this is Friday that we're taping this on. It's what I call Financial Fridays. So every Friday I go and sort of check the finances of each of my companies. And so I'm with the CFOs or I'm with the CIOs of the business, and we're just going through and making sure, did we actually make the money we thought we were going to make this week? How healthy is this company? And we check a few metrics on that perspective. So pay attention to your money, and it turns out it'll pay more attention to you.
I love that. What you water grows, right? That's the biggest mistake. And I think I remember there was a business owner. I was at a conference not too long ago with women entrepreneurs, and there's a woman who literally said, "I don't like to think about money. I don't like to talk about money. And when I started my business, I just hired someone to handle that part." And then she talked about how that literally went haywire because that person had invested very heavily on a celebrity that ended up not following through. And all of their money was invested in this one person who decided that she couldn't follow through with her, advertising promises. And so I remember thinking that, sitting there, and I'm like, God, this is like crazy that women, not just women, but really a lot of women, especially, feel like they just don't want to think about it or talk about it. And so that it like almost doesn't exist. So I love that you're talking about this. So you have a new book that has come out as of this podcast release called Main Street Millionaire. What inspired you to write this book? And maybe as a kind of coupling with that, what is a silver tsunami?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I kind of think in the future, which I'd be curious your take, but I think in the future, you'll be able to buy a lot of health. And I think we're already there. Like now you could buy a lot of aesthetic health. You could certainly buy the best health care. I think you might be able to buy fitness in the future even. And so once I started thinking about all the things that money can provide, I actually think that money is the key to most freedom, base level freedom. And anybody that tells you otherwise is already rich. And so, find out for yourself. And I basically, when I started writing the book, was thinking, well, what is the clearest path to wealth that exists? And to me, the way I would define clear is, where does the data tell you more people than anywhere else have gotten quite rich from? And if you look at it, the most people who get wealthy are from some form of acquisition. So you could be acquiring clients one by one. You could be acquiring clients one by many. And the second thing that they all had is ownership. So 80% of all millionaires in the US are actually self-made, which is good to know. And 60% of all millionaires own a business. And so I realized, man, if 90% of businesses fail, startups fail, but 60% of all millionaires own a business, we have to bridge the gap. And I don't know how to make it easier to start a business and have that business that starts be profitable. I do know how to find profitable businesses that are already cash flowing, that have been in existence for a long time, and have a higher likelihood of continuing to cash flow. And so I started writing the book because I realized that we increasingly don't own anything in the US. So if 60% of millionaires are all made from ownership, but only 6% of Americans, up to, depending on the segment, 19% of Americans own a small business, no wonder we're not rich. And so I want to change that with the book Main Street Millionaire, which in the book we basically talk about how do we get ownership right now today so that we can have freedom in the future. It doesn't mean you get freedom day one of owning things, but I do think that is the path to wealth.
Talk me through that, because say someone who has never owned anything. So I'll take myself, for example. I went to med school. I went to nutrition school, then I went to med school. I took 0 business classes, 0. I think I took statistics because that was a pre-med class. And I mean, that's not even business, but like, so say, and you come out into the world and everything is a business. And so my first job, they were like, you're going to be an employee, but you have this future that you can become a partner in the business. And I remember the first day of partnership, and I went to my first meeting, and they presented like the P&L, and I might as well be in like Chinese class because I didn't even know. So say someone like me is reading this book, and I've had an education over the last few years. I'm still not, where I need to be, but what if someone who's never owned a business, doesn't have any background? Where would they start?
Yeah. Well, one, you start with the 3 waves. You mentioned one of them. So you got to first know the opportunity. There's 10 steps to buying a business. And the thing that everybody hid from us, that they lied to you about, was that this was only for really rich people and people who already know how to run businesses. There's just levels to the game. Are you going to come right out having never bought a business before, having never run a business before, and buy a $10 million business? Probably not. Maybe you're incredibly intelligent and you could figure that out. But instead, do we think that home ownership is possible for every American? Yes, we do. We think that's possible. We don't think everybody can own a $10 million house, but we do think that everybody could own maybe a studio apartment. And so the idea is, where can we start where you already have an unfair advantage? And you could start small. I mean, one of the businesses that I bought just to show other people that it's totally doable at all levels was $3,000, and we sold it for $8,000. And we sold it
What business was that?
It was
What kind of business?
A newsletter business.
Love that.
So an online business, a little email list. And I basically wanted to see, can I buy it for cheap? Can I build some more products around it? And can I sell it like 60 or 90 days later? I can't remember the exact amount. And so we did that. And so I think you can start with where you are. Now, doctors are interesting because I think private equity firms, the big buyers of businesses overall, they love to buy doctors' offices. Why? Because you often have very low client churn. You might have patients, 80 to 90% of your clients stay with you their entire lives. That's crazy. You, in many instances, could have examples of recurring revenue because they have to come in quarterly or monthly or annually. You also, in the medical field, have a lot of like outdated systems and processes, right? So we love outdated systems and processes because we can come in and we can increase the revenue and the profit of a business by adding some new tools to it. And so I really think if you are a highly intelligent, high-performing individual, you're crazy to not learn the inner workings of a business and thus acquisition. Because you might be like me, where I didn't have a brilliant idea. I was like a doctor in some ways in finance. I was a finance gal. And so I worked in corporate America for 12 years, on Wall Street in finance firms for other people before I even ever would have pondered buying my own business. And the only reason that I eventually did is because I hated my job so much that I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I ended up buying a business, but I didn't think I knew how to run a business because I actually hadn't done that before. I'd just been somebody else's employee. And then I realized that running a division in a company, running a business, running a patient book, understanding simple math and having a lot of grit is usually what's necessary to succeed in business overall. And I'm not saying it's easy, but I am saying I think it's worth it. And you have a higher likelihood of success if you own something and want to make money.
Okay. You had said like what are the worst businesses to buy or get involved with? Because there's some that commonly fail, and I don't think everyone knows this.
Yeah. Well, some of the least favorite businesses for me, businesses that I would never buy, are restaurants. Highest failure rate, one of the more expensive things to start up. You have a high spoilage rate. Your stuff becomes not good pretty quickly. You have what's called a red ocean. So you have a lot of competition all around you. You have a very variable staff that's always in and out and pretty unreliable. You have a lot of certifications that you need and licensing, and you have downside. People get sick with what you do. That's pretty high. Restaurants are not my favorite. Second one is retail. So we've seen this all around the world, but little tiny boutiques, mom and pop, retail stores where you sell goodies, they're sort of going by the wayside as increasingly we shop online. And the way that they don't go by the wayside is that you're in a main thoroughfare and you have high traffic. Well, what does high traffic mean? Really expensive leases. You also, if we're talking clothing, for instance, might have to buy new inventory 4 times a year. So seasonality of clothes, and you're paying for your inventory up front before you've even sold it. So you got to make sure that you're good at figuring out, can I sell this thing later on? And so I don't love retail. And one of the other ones that I don't love is hotels. I think it's real estate masquerading as a business, 24/7 service, really low margins, meaning the profit is really low, really expensive to build outright. It doesn't mean that you can't make a ton of money in all 3 of those. It just means you have to be a really good operator if you're going to. And when I start, I want to play a game where I have a higher likelihood of success because it's not an overly complex business. Then the better you get, eventually you might be an amazing operator and you might be able to make a hotel make you billions. But in the beginning, just assume that you're not smarter than the person you took over the business for.
Yeah, I love that because I think restaurants are very tempting because it almost seems like the easiest first thing that comes to mind for someone who's never done anything before. And that's a really tough market. But there are a few industries that you think are good options to explore as someone who's maybe just reading this book and wants to get started, like wants to apply some of this knowledge. So what industries are you seeing as opportunities for people who are new to this and want to, really learn this?
Yeah. Well, I think in the book I have like 130 different businesses I like to buy. But some of the ones that stand out for me is I have a segment called the gateway drug business, which basically means I want to have a business that's potentially not that expensive. I want a business that's not that complex. I want a business that doesn't have that many employees. And I want a business that has some component of perhaps not needing me there to run it all the time. And so that could be things like, for instance, a property management company. It could be a laundromat. It could be a car wash company. You could actually do arbitrage where you get leads for small businesses and you just sell the leads to the small businesses to a handyman company or to a window washing company. And I really think like one of the most important things people can do, because I don't think anybody wakes up and goes, the thing is, I want to buy a business. Like that's probably not very likely. Instead, people are like, I want more freedom. I want more autonomy. I want to be in charge. I want less risk. I don't want to have one person control whether, I continue to get a paycheck or not, like being able to fire me. And so if that resonates with you, then what I think you should do more than anything else is learn deal making, because I think that is actually the language of wealth. And deal making really just means if you can buy and sell a business, you understand how to make money in a business because you understand revenue and you understand risks. And those 2 things, the 2 R's, how much money you can make and what risk you have to continue to make money, are what make wealthy people.
I love this. Okay, I'm going to workshop this with you a little bit because I and new, as I told you, I'm a new entrepreneur, and it just so happened that I never wanted to be. I created this, for example, I'll give you an example. I created this chai latte mix because I was like, I want something that is coconut milk, naturally sweetened. I don't want as many calories as like the typical Starbucks. And I just made it for my audience. Okay. And then I created chai protein, which is like a protein powder that's also is a spinoff of the latte powder. Now, if I'm going to take this, which is just a fun thing that I did for my followers, and I was going to grow this into an actual real small business, what would be my best top 3 steps?
Well, one, I would say if you've never done it before, you've picked one of the hardest businesses out there. You've
Yeah.
picked e-commerce and you've picked food or CPG. E-commerce requires a lot because if you think about it, your competitors are everybody. So you got to compete because you're all on the internet, not in a geographic radius of whoever exists around you, but with Amazon, let's say. You have to compete with Bezos. And so what I would actually tell you is don't start that business. Instead, especially for a person like you, I'd say, okay, you have a chai latte that you want to create. One, buy an existing CPG business that's already up and running, change the packaging and the formulating of the ingredients, use the current client list, the current employees and their knowledge systems and processes to add your new spin to the business, which is this healthier version. You're also probably pretty good at social media. And so your branding, your affiliate sales, your ability to get attention is probably one of your main skill sets. Probably not spinning a business up from zero, spinning a team up from zero and building the entire thing. The other thing we talk a lot about is partial acquisitions. So you might say, where is there a company out there that I really like, that I just want to own part of it? And I want to have one of my products, let's say this chai latte, be part of their segment. So let's go find a small coffee company that I could partner with. And I could say, hey, one, I want to look under the hood, make sure this is a good business. Once I've done that, listen, I think your business is valued at X. You know, if you read the book, you know how to do that. And you'd say, I want to own like 20% of the business. And I want to own distributing equity where you make money every time they give distributions to the owners. And I also want to own equity long-term where if you sell, I make money. And for this 20%, I might give you some cash. I might also just help you grow the business with putting my attention on it. And then I'd like to add my white labeled product to it. I want to have Amy's, chai latte as part of your offer stack. And so I think there's 3 levels to the game of business. And then level 1 entrepreneur says, how do I do something? When something's wrong, they go, how do I fix it? When they want to do something, they go, how? A level 2 entrepreneur says, who? Who could solve this problem for me? What a consultant could I pay? Who could I partner with? And a level 3 entrepreneur thinks, how could I buy a very high likelihood of getting exactly what I want? Which means you do an acquisition, you do an acqui-hire, you acquire part of a company. And if you think about it, Elon bought Tesla, right? And then he built the thing on top of it. And I think really sophisticated entrepreneurs start to think this way overall. And now you might say to me, Codie, I've dreamed my entire life of running a chai latte company. It's like everything that I've ever wanted. In which case I'd say, okay, go build it. If that is like a passion project that you're like, I want to run this business and nothing else, then do it. We need more entrepreneurs like that. But if you're like, I just like kind of want this to exist and I want to make money off of it, then I would say it's just not the highest likelihood path.
And so what you would say is someone like that is like, find a product that you really love and maybe you do a partial acquisition because your skill set, for me, my skill set is educating, for, giving audiences medical, nutritional knowledge. And so I could leverage that for something that I really love and own part of that.
100%, especially if you have audience or attention. I mean, creators in particular, I think are very well positioned to learn acquisitions because you don't have to use money always. You can use attention. You can use brand trust transfer, which is people trust Dr. Amy. So they might actually also trust this product. An unknown product really could benefit off of that trust transfer. And so there's lots of ways to do deals without money.
And I think that's a better way to do it than these like one transactional deals where someone is like, oh, you love this coffee. Like, can you do a post for us for like X $1,000? And you're like, okay, but what is that going to give me in the long run? Because unless we're going to be in a 2-year relationship, it's not like you're really leveraging, you're not really getting the benefit of it. You'll get a little cash for one time.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's the worst business model that you could imagine.
Yeah, because for me, it's like, one, it lowers my credibility if I do anything. So I have to be extremely picky. And secondly, a lot of these it's growing their business in the long run, but it's really doing nothing to grow my business. It's actually like, it's for people who really just desperately need some cash and want to transact that way.
Yeah, well, and I think it's also that's kind of the point I'm making with Main Street Millionaire, which is when you understand your value and how to negotiate for deals, it's hard to be poor
Yeah.
because when somebody tries to give you a different salary, you will have all these levers. Right now, you might think salary negotiation looks like I ask for more money, or maybe I ask for more time off, or maybe I
Mhm.
ask for a signing bonus, or maybe I ask for a moving bonus. There's like a few levers that you have. But when you become a pro at negotiating, you go, nah, I'm going to negotiate for some upside on the things that I close. I'm going to negotiate for the ability to, if I cut these costs in the business, I get to keep some of the costs. I'm going to negotiate for equity, and here's how. And so I'm trying to get more people conversational or fluent in this idea of when you understand money and you can speak the language, you'll just make more of it. And I've certainly found this over my life, and you can become more creative of a deal maker.
You have said, and I've heard you say this, that one of the biggest mistakes that people make is that they concentrate on saving rather than making money. Why is that? And what can people do better?
You can only save your way to zero, right? So if you want to make more money, you could not eat, you could not sleep. That could work out for you. You could not have a bed to lay in at night. You could not have a roof over your head, and you could potentially get to $0 in spending with a really miserable, unhappy life. Or you could look at where is there what's called asymmetric upside. In saving, there's no such thing as asymmetric downside. You can't have like continuous, nonstop, like non-correlated to anything else savings, but you can earn basically unlimited. Your your upside is uncapped. And so if I was young, I would learn how to save because it's easy. Just, the 50-20-30 rule works. So if you want to follow how people in finance save money, it's basically 50% of everything that you make goes towards necessities. This is like, the things you absolutely need to have: rent, getting to your job, etc. 20% goes to things that 20% goes to like things that you want in the future. I call it the future you fund. So
Mhm.
this is like a little bit of savings. This might be money for a down payment of a house, et cetera. And then 30% goes to fun, right? But it's
Mm.
only 30%. So 50% you have to have, 30% fun, which is like dinners out, not groceries, et cetera. And 20% is your is your future fund.
Mhm.
And so you've saved. That's it. Take that, put it in like a Vanguard or a BlackRock ETF account at the lowest cost possible for as long as possible, and continue to invest that 20% over time. And when you're 65, you'll probably be pretty well off, enough to, potentially take cruises for a long time.
It's so
But
funny because I'm from an immigrant family, and saving was like the biggest topic of conversation for my mom. Like, I literally think we saved like Taco Bell sauces. We would save like everything, like containers and boxes. And I remember thinking it's like so ingrained
yep.
in her upbringing. It was a very like a mindset that really wasn't abundant. And you always felt like you had to like save, you had to kind of be scared about losing money. It was always like this fear of losing money. And I think it took me a long time to kind of get out of that mindset of scarcity and more into abundance, because a lot of us grow up with that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I was the same way. My mother was obsessed with saving, and I was always concerned that I wouldn't have enough money. And she was always,
Yeah.
what are you spending on here? What are you spending on there?
Yes.
So then I would sneak spending, kind of like one sneaks alcohol, which is
Yeah.
actually really a bad cycle to get into. And I think that's why a lot of people like to spend to feel good, because it was a little naughty for us
Yeah.
when we were younger.
Yeah.
And it gives you an adrenal response too. It makes you know all about this. What am I
Yeah.
talking to the doctor about, right? Like you get excited. There's like,
Dopamine. Yeah. It's like a dopamine hit, when it's like drinking alcohol or having like a fast food meal, like getting a purchase that is considered non-essential. That's why I mean, the makeup and skincare industry literally lives on that dopamine hit that people get. And same thing for men, like sports apparel, like, anything it's basically you do it because you feel like this hit of dopamine when you have it. And that's not a bad thing per se, right? Like you having a life without buying anything that you love is like a sad life. But that being said, it almost comes from a place of like, because a lot of us, including me, were brought up where everything you spent had to be something that is absolute necessity or saving for the future. And so and I think that's a really nice framework to be like, concentrate on making money, not necessarily just saving money.
Yep.
So, okay, one thing I was so shocked at the statistic from the book, is that up to 85% of people don't like what they do for a living. Can you unpack that? And what do people do that's a lot of people.
Yeah, we have a workplace unhappiness epidemic in this country, which is that increasingly we do jobs we don't like for people we don't much like, for companies we don't think very highly of. And we feel like slavery has been abolished, but in many ways we are self-slaving ourselves. And the reason we are is because we don't actually know how to increase our earnings. And oftentimes we don't really know how to value ourselves and increase our value stack. And so in this country right now today, you have somewhere between 60 and 85% of people are unhappy with the job that they have currently. And these people will stay with that company on average for 2 to 5 years. So for 2 to 5 years, you will stay in something that makes you unhappy. And I think that has come at the byproduct of we have so many options these days, but we don't have a lot of people that can help us determine how do we get out. It's like we're on this hamster wheel, which a lot of people have felt, which we stay on forever. We don't see a light at the end of the tunnel. And if we're ever tired and we fall off, we stop earning. We have no earnings ability the second we get off the hamster wheel. So even if you like the hamster wheel when you start, after 2 to 5 years of doing it and seeing nowhere to go besides you continuing to hamster wheel in some way, shape, or form, I think it increases our misery. And I think there's other things, like I think people should learn that labor is lovely in a lot of ways. But my bigger point here is that if you don't like what you do, one, kind of on you. And that's not a very popular thing to say these days. But we have the lowest unemployment rate in the US that we've had in decades. We increasingly have wage stagnation. So we don't have a lot of people earning more, which is a problem. At the top, they're earning a lot more. In the middle and the bottom, they're not earning a lot more. But there's a lot of optionality for jobs today. I think the problem is that we don't really know what we want. So we, in the beginning of the book, have something called the perfect fit business, which is basically it's like a Venn diagram of 3 circles coming together to say, where are your skills that you're really good at? Where is your network of people who can help you in business one way, shape, or other? And where is your passion, or I prefer the word obsession? Like, where do you do a thing just because you love it? Where are you staying up late researching weird things on the internet? Where, like for me, I just love the game of business and I kind of taught myself to. And so if we could put people's perfect fit, the know thyself, we call it our deal clarity segment, together in front of most people, we can help you find either a business for you to own or buy, or one for you to work for and at least get some equity in. So if at some point you want to get off the hamster wheel, you can take a break and you can still get paid.
So what about so a lot of our audience that listens here is nutrition, health, fitness obsessed. Okay. So for those people who find themselves maybe obsessed with health, nutrition, fitness, they have a lot of knowledge in that area. That's like a good number of my audience. What kind of businesses would they be looking for that could fit that skill set?
Well, I'm not sure that you need to buy a business in a thing that you are passionate about, like health and fitness. In fact, I think that might be bad advice. Instead, I would say, where can you make the most money to have the life that you want? What do you really want from a monetary perspective and from a life perspective? Because then you can afford anything fitness and health that you want. And so I really focus on money more than anything else. And I think a lot of times we go, especially this day and age, because we can talk about things that we're obsessed with all day. We can spend our time, in the gym a ton if you want. But, how many trainers have you met who get burned out and don't want to train forever? How many gym owners have you met that don't want to play that game forever? It's just like they turned their passion into their profit and they didn't realize that meant that they might suck all the passion out of it. And so instead, I would say, until you've made your first million, at least. If you have
Mhm.
your first million, you're set. You already have some income streams. Then maybe follow your passion. But until then, I would say obsess on making money. Happiness levels increase materially up to $500,000. I'm not convinced that $500,000 is the cap. I think the difference in making $500,000 to a mil and 2 million is actually pretty significant with inflation and taxes. And so obsess on making that first 500 to a million, and then you will find that money really decreases misery. And so I think the biggest mistake people make is they're like, they'll say to me, I want to buy a laundromat because you talked about laundromat, or I want to buy a graphic design firm because I love designing things. Well, when you buy a business, you don't necessarily do the work. I don't buy a roofing company so I can go
Yeah.
roof the company.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like branding and marketing and sales and leadership. So I buy businesses that I think have the highest potential for profits consistently over time. And then I learn how to run those things. And I think that's where more people should spend their time. And then they can spend all the money they want on fitness and on health.
Is is gardening kind of in that world of window washing, or is that a different category? Like, is that like, people who, because I met someone who's built a huge business on like a landscaping company where he kind of
Right.
has, and that's kind of a similar concept like the laundromat and window washing, where it's a very, um, there's not a lot of moving parts to it. Is that right? Is that how you identify it?
Yeah, I mean, we call those Main Street businesses. So these are the
Yeah.
businesses all around you that are not moded businesses. So like a
Mhm.
moded business would be Facebook
Yeah.
or Superhuman or an
Mhm.
AI company. They're like
Mhm.
never been created before, really unique businesses. And that's where we think all the money's made. But actually, you have a much higher likelihood of losing money and not winning in AI than you do in landscaping. Uh,
Yeah.
because those businesses have already been in existence for a long amount of time, aka the Lindy effect. And those businesses, on average, already have clients and are making money. And the AI companies are brand new, and so there's a lot of a risk into it. So surely, like landscaping. But I think the other thing that people don't think about is this is any type of business. So a podcast production business, I've owned one
Mm.
of those and cash flowed off of it remotely. An interior design company. It's just oftentimes we think these are jobs, not businesses. And we don't realize that we could go in to our interior designer who we just hired, who's a little bit older of a lady or a man, and has been doing it for a minute and say, what are you going to like? Are you going to continue to run this business forever? What's your thought here? And start having a conversation with them to say, well, maybe you could apprentice me a little bit. I'll come work for you as an employee for a year or two. I'd like to learn more about how to do this. And why don't you sell the business to me? And we can use future profits of the business for me to buy it, but we could even buy a kind of sexy business like an interior design business.
So if someone reads this book and they want to get they want to get started, I know that you have programs and groups, because I think a lot of this is getting your feet wet and then also talking to other people who are doing it. So what is the opportunity for that?
Yeah. I mean, I think the worst thing that you can do when doing deals is do them alone because
Yeah.
if the first deal is bad, you probably won't do another one. You'll think that deal making doesn't work for you. You won't realize maybe you weren't the best deal maker to begin with. So I'm trying to give Wharton a run for its money. So they do mergers and acquisitions probably better than anybody else in the higher ed space, but not that great, in my
Mhm.
opinion. Like they are not having people come out of the Wharton, the Harvard, the Stanford, the MIT programs and buy businesses. And we are. So ours is called Contrarian Community. And the idea is simply this. There's something like 11 million small businesses for sale right now in the US. We have this waving tide. You talked about it, the silver tsunami, the great retirement, this group of baby boomers who are leaving the workspace, 65 plus, they're ready to move on. Why can't the younger generations take over for the retiring generations in order to own these businesses? And the only way we're going to do that is by getting a group of people together and getting them to match up and learn how to run these businesses, which takes a little work. And so, we put like 3,000 people through this program where we get together and have like three things that I think are critical to doing deals. One is an investor committee. So if you were in private equity, you'd get together each week with a group of your other investors and you'd beat up deals. You'd be like, no, Amy, I don't like that deal. Like, I like that one, but at that price, no, let's get our attorney to look at that. That looks a little fishy. So we get together, all of us, and we beat up people's deals live. So you learn, probably not that dissimilar to when you were in med school, by looking at a ton of cases, right? Like, how do you actually learn how to diagnose somebody and fix them? You see it a ton, and eventually you go, that's ringworm. I can just tell. I've seen it so many times. Got it, right? Same thing in deal making. So you have your investor committee every Monday night. Then you have your buy-side advisory team. So these are our facilitators and ambassadors who have done like billions of dollars in deals combined, and they get together and they do office hours every week. So when you're like, I want to buy this landscaping company, you're like, oh, go to Robert. He just bought one, he for 10 million and he sold one for 20. Get on the phone with him. He'll beat up the deal with you. And then finally, you want to have your deal team, and your deal team is like your accountant and your attorney. So basically these two people are going to help you close the deal live. And so you go to our vendor database, you talk to the others in the community, and you say, this is the right type of person for me. This is not the right type person for me. And you combine. And with those three things, we think that we've been able to actually move people from, that, hey, this is interesting, to I've actually acquired, to I've built up the business post-acquisition, and maybe I'm doing my second or I'm selling it.
I love that. How many hours? Okay, so say someone's working a very crazy schedule and they want to join. They read the book. They're ready to go. What kind of commitment, time-wise? I mean, personal time, obviously, you're going to learn about it on your own. But like, what is the commitment to being in this your group?
Well, I think you should really commit to the Monday meetings. So that's 1 hour a week, every week. Then an extra 30 minutes of Q&A. So you kind of need an hour and a half every single week. And then we have a curriculum that's 10 steps to buying a business. And so that'll take you about 3 to 4 weeks to get through if you're doing like 20 minutes a day. So, while you're doing your cardio on your walking treadmill, you can be going through the curriculum 20 minutes a day in 4 weeks, or if you're aggressive, you can do it for an hour and get through it in like 2 weeks. After you've done that coursework and started to get on the Monday Night Lives, what we talk about is that it turns on your reticular activating system, right? So it's not necessarily that you have to then go spend a bunch of time searching for businesses to buy. It's instead your mind gets turned on and you start to see deals around you. And what I've seen happen again and again is, especially for business owners, they'll be like, I have this partner that, does our ad buying for us. That's really good, but they're having a trouble scaling. Why don't I negotiate a deal to own part of that? Or they'll be like, oh, my friend, his dad's retiring and he owns that cool coffee shop on the corner that like I've always kind of thought about. And you'll just start to see it. And then I would say to buy a business usually takes you, if you want to go through the entire process to buy your own business, to search and find your own business, takes you about a year. But what I tell most people is like, I've never met somebody that regretted learning deal making. Like there's very few things I can say that about in life. Very few.
And it's like a life skill for everything, like everything is a deal that you're doing. Like when people come to you for your book, it's a deal. Like you have to figure out, I don't even think of it as deal making. It's like everything in life ends up being a deal. So I think it's like life skill that you're giving to people. So I'm very, very excited about this book coming out into the world, because it's something I think that can change people's lives, which I love, because I think what you're doing already is very life-changing. Because I'm from that health and fitness nutrition background, I have to ask you about your own routines. Do you have anything that kind of keeps you grounded in the day? Are there foods that you eat, routines that you do, things that you follow to help you?
Yeah. Can I tell you about a weird one I'm doing right now?
Yeah.
I'm doing a goat milk cleanse, a raw goat milk cleanse.
Okay.
Now, so with like a bunch of herbs. So I'm kind of, I don't know, I've gotten to this point in life where I watched my brother go through like very traditional, either give it a pill or give it a cut medicine. And, he got his gallbladder out way too young and probably shouldn't have, and it's caused him like lifelong effects. And at this point in life, what my husband and I, and he's probably been the biggest impetus for it, is like, we really try to treat the symptom. I'm not treat the symptom to like treat the actual issue as opposed to fix the symptom. So more than
Yeah.
anything for me, we're all whole foods, if at all humanly possible. I'm all for fasting and cleanses. I want to try to decrease the amount of toxins in my life. We're big sauna people.
Love sauna.
Yeah, I try to work out, 5 or 6 days a week. My husband's really intense on rolling out and detoxing and Epsom salt baths. So we do a lot of things to try to decrease the fact that I think we live in a kind of toxic world in so many
Yeah.
ways. And so
What is this goat milk cleanse for? Just out of curiosity.
it's for potential parasite.
Got it.
Yeah.
And do you feel like it's working for you?
Well, we'll see. I'm going to test it. So I have like a real doctor. So
Yeah.
I have a type of parasite, and I
Yeah.
could do like an antibiotic or something
Yeah.
for it. She said, we could do that. She's like, you could
Yeah.
also try this other thing and do
Yeah.
it for 8 days, see if it works. We'll send you back and do another parasite test. And if it doesn't get rid of it, then we'll do the hardcore thing. And so, it wasn't going to kill me anyway, but anytime these days, I'm not a doctor. I don't profess to be one at all, but anytime I can like try to do something a little bit more naturally,
Yeah.
that's where I go today.
How's your sleep? And like, are you a sleeper? No, not
I
sleeper.
am. We just bought we partnered with 8 Sleep for my newsletter,
Yeah.
and I don't track my sleep. I've always just slept pretty well. I don't have a lot of problems with that. But I do love that thing. So we got the 8 Sleep cover thing. And I really like to sleep a little bit warmer, but not as warm as I thought. And then my husband is obviously a cold, crazy person. And
Yeah.
that actually increased my sleep score significantly, which was really helpful. I mean, it's expensive, but I
Yeah.
found it to be worth it.
I think sleep is such a huge, like when you get to that place where all your like neurons are firing and you feel like you can think straight. For me, it's like a good night's sleep makes everything in my day happen so much better.
Yeah.
So first of all, I realize I could talk to you for hours, and thank you for your time. I think this book is really something that's transformational. I've learned so much from it, even before I talk to you, and then definitely after I've talked to you. And so I think it's going to be really useful for a lot of people. So if you had to, and this is just off the cuff, so you don't have to have anything, you can send it to me later if you want. But if you had to give a message to people out there, there's a reason that you wrote the book. And what is that reason? What's your message to everyone?
Well, maybe aligned with you, we have a saying at Contrarian Thinking, which is civilize the mind, make savage the body, build the bank account. And
Love it.
so I think, I can help people get as rich as they want to and are willing to work towards. But man, if they also aren't healthy, kind of what does it matter? And
Mhm.
so I think it's really lovely that, you share your message with so many people. So I just want to commend you for that. And then the idea for me is it is this little triad. It's like, how can we have really strong minds so we can push back on narratives that aren't real? How can we have really strong bodies so we can enjoy all the fruits of our labor? And then finally, how can we have a really big bank account so that we can be the architect of our own life? And what I hope is that when people read the book, whether you buy a business or not, you see in the world that, money kind of runs most of what we do. And you see in the world how to assert your will on it with money. And I think if more people did that, then we wouldn't have so much scarcity and there would be more builders out there as opposed to burn it downers.
I think this new world, Codie, is like a completely different world from, I don't know, my dad worked for a company that his entire career and then like retired. And I think that is not the future for most people. And this book is something that is going to be a big toolkit. So tell us where we can find more about you, about the book, about the programs, etc.
It would be all at msmbook.com. So Main Street Millionaire, msmbook.com. And yeah, and we're going to do this huge event on the 12th for anybody that bought the book. I haven't actually announced this anywhere yet, so people will be
Yeah.
hearing from you, but this will be on December 12th. We're going to do it's a celebration event. So it's not, nothing's going to be sold, but the ticket to entry is a book. And if you do, I got like some crazy people coming to it. And the idea is, how can we own our future? How can we own our freedom here a little bit? And how can we take back Main Street together? And I'm going to talk about why it's so important, and then we're going to learn from a bunch of really cool people.
Where is that event going to be? I know
It's
you're
gonna be
probably
virtual. So if you go to msmbook.com and you buy the
virtual
book, you'll get all the information
tickets.
on it, and it'll be free for anybody who got the book.
I'm so excited for this and your messaging. So the reason I reached out to you in the first place is that I think I heard you speak on a few different podcasts and I was following you. And I was like, so much of what you talk about is very different and needed for especially my majority of my audience is women and women who either don't want to think about money, don't want money, or they want money, but they don't want to think about it. And so I thank you for your time and good luck with the book.
Well, my pleasure. And ladies, go get that paper. I promise you'll never regret that.